First Lady Jill Biden recently sat down for an MSNBC interview where she discussed all things Biden family, including her husband and Hunter. Let's hear a little bit of what she had to say.
How have you been coping personally with the onslaught of accusations against your husband and your family, including and especially Hunter? It's the focus of a House Oversight Committee hearing, holding him in contempt, obsessing over him, showing pictures of him during vulnerable moments in his battle with addiction on the floor of the House. This would crush any family.
Mika, I think what they are doing to Hunter is cruel. And I'm really proud of how Hunter has rebuilt his life after addiction. You know, I love my son, and it's hurt my grandchildren. And that's what I'm so concerned about, that it's affecting their lives as well.
Jill also bragged about her husband's supposed vigor when asked about Joe's age and health.
Your husband is 81. At the end of the second term, he'd be 86. As his life partner of 46 years, is there a part of you that is worried about his age and health? Can he do it?
He can do it, and I see Joe every day. I see him out, traveling around this country. I see his vigor. I see his energy. I see his passion.
The First Lady went on to discuss her husband's supposed integrity and character because, of course, I'm sure the president has never told a lie in his entire life.
So I see that strength and that resilience and that steadiness every single day. Wow. And he's unflappable. And when I look at the man, his integrity, his character has not changed, and he's unwavering. He's unflappable.
I don't know how I feel about unflappable, Amber. I've seen him get flapped. We've seen him flapping.
He be flapping.
Many gaffes, many things he should not be saying that he is saying, many things he said that he's now contradicted. So I just don't know if that's accurate. She is his wife, so she probably is the last person to criticize him. But if I was the wife of someone that was going to be 81 and try and serve as president, someone who's been seen with note cards telling him when to stand, accidentally holding them up, I would be concerned. I would not want to have a husband not only embarrass himself, but embarrass the family and the country by being that old and trying to serve in the highest office, like for his peace in his older years. Let him retire. I mean, she could have said, I support whatever he wants to do. If he wants to retire, he can retire. But he said he doesn't want to. Of course, I'd love to spend time with him and see him resting, but he's determined to serve. There was just no honesty, not even an ounce in that response.
Yeah, I actually think what she's doing is quite cruel. And I think we have to remember that she actually announced the president's re-election campaign before he even had the opportunity to, which was very bizarre and was amid all of these questions about his cognitive abilities and his age. And people were raising these questions back on the 2020 trail, even as early as the Democratic primary. I mean, it's at that time that I think family members have a responsibility and obligation to step in if they see that their loved one is struggling. And she didn't do that. She continued to push him along. And there were some reports at the time that she has been very insistent that he run for president. So this is incredibly troubling. And I can't stand how the Democrats and the Biden family in particular have repeatedly reduced what the Hunter Biden investigation is about to his struggles with addiction. The struggles with addiction are perhaps a reason why he engaged in some of this behavior, but it certainly doesn't excuse it or absolve him from responsibility. The reality is that he is facing all kinds of charges related to failure to pay his taxes, including an allegedly years-long scheme to avoid paying millions of dollars to the IRS that he was just arraigned on in California. He pleaded not guilty to those charges just yesterday. And he has also charges related to lying on a federal form to purchase a firearm, as well as the improper disposal of that firearm. And then, of course, there's the broader investigation into whether or not any of that foreign business money was funneled to the president or other members of the Biden family in exchange for either the appearance that he was able to give access to who was then the vice president, his father, or in exchange for specific policy changes. So leaning back on the addiction issue is such a diversion and a distraction from what the real concerns are about what Hunter Biden was doing in those years.
Yeah, I think in the Hunter Biden case, we know that wealthy, powerful people have good attorneys. And when something is said about them in public that is damaging and false, there is a defamation lawsuit. And because we haven't seen a defamation lawsuit on the Burisma front, it tells me that there is something that they're hiding that they don't want to come out in a deposition. I don't think they need to be showing photos of Hunter Biden at his very worst on the floor of Congress or in media. But really what's at the heart of this is that there's corruption at the highest level in the United States of America. And I'm sure that Jill Biden had an agreement that there wouldn't be any questions about that kind of corruption before even showing up to the interview. There was an exchange made or an approval of questions that were going to be asked. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate that there's both sides using this as a diversion on the Republican side, wanting to show the photos to demonstrate that Hunter Biden's just not a great guy. And then Jill Biden, instead of also acknowledging the corruption in that interview, just saying, it's really sad what they're doing to Hunter and my grandchildren about, having this hearing and highlighting all of his, history of addiction and doing, ridiculous things. But that's not really about the corruption either. So there's fault on both sides there. But to have no question about the corruption and then address the addiction that Hunter Biden has in his history there seems like a cop-out to me on both sides, questions being asked and answers given.
Sure. And to your point about the potential cover-up of not bringing a defamation lawsuit because of the ability for the other side to then have discovery. I had a similar feeling about the child support case that Hunter was going through with the mother of his child, Navy Biden, when just days away from them potentially going into discovery and having to look at his financial records to indicate how much he should actually be paying in child support. All of a sudden, that case was settled, which was a very suspicious timing. Meanwhile, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi joined MSNBC's Morning Joe and touted Biden's economy. So let's hear some of that.
America's economy is the envy of the world. How do we get that message out to voters?
Well, again, I used to say when I was speaker, I can bake the pie or I can sell the pie. It's hard to bake and sell at the same time. Mm-hmm. He's been working very hard, and now he has to sell it. Right. He has to sell it. And again, this is a very responsible, knowledgeable, values-based person who takes his responsibility seriously. Now it's time to campaign, make the public aware of it. And that's almost ready.
The pie is ready.
I think it's just incredibly insulting to the American people to suggest that they're simply not educated enough or that the media is not doing a good enough job telling them about Biden's wonderful economy, and that's why they think the economy is bad. Meanwhile, inflation just ticked up again. The rate of price increases ticked up again this past month, suggesting that inflation is not over. And of course, even when inflationary rates decrease some, people are still paying overall higher prices than they were because of the rapid increase in prices that we saw over the past couple of years. So everyday goods like groceries, gas, all of these other things that people have to pay for on a pretty much daily basis are incredibly more expensive than they were before Biden took office.
Yeah, it's not really a pie that they share. They might be baking a pie, but it's a pie that the ruling class owns entirely, and the working class that also does a lot to bake the pie. If we're talking about the economy, the pie itself is the goods and services created by American labor, by the working class, and we've seen wages stagnant since the 1970s. We've seen continued decline in the quality of life for working people. And this is deliberate policy choices by Nancy Pelosi, by the president, to have Jerome Powell intentionally keeping Americans unemployed, to have interest rates going up, to quell the growth of the economy so that more people are unemployed, with this idea that they don't even believe in, as Jerome Powell has admitted it time and again on the floor of Congress, that there isn't actually a relationship between raising interest rates and getting inflation under control, that we're really not seeing unemployment determine what the inflationary rate is in the United States, So to have this explicit policy that we're going to raise interest rates so that it becomes more expensive for people to start businesses, invest in businesses, get mortgages for houses, especially at a time when we've seen commercial real estate buy up homes, the regular quality of life for working people under these conditions means that even more people will be unemployed when people are already struggling to pay their bills. It's ridiculous. It's not a good situation. Americans have an economy that's the envy of the world because the ruling class controls so many resources around the world. They don't envy the regular life of everyday working people. And that's something that really neither side, whether Republicans or Democrats, has changed in securing the presidency or the majority in Congress.
I find it very ironic, by the way, that this is coming from Nancy Pelosi, who is accused of reflexively insider trading on pretty much every issue she's involved in Congress, has made hundreds of millions of dollars just by serving as a politician. Her husband is under scrutiny for alleged insider trading as well. So, I mean, just the backdrop of that is even more egregious. And I wanted to go back for a moment just to the Hunter Biden question, because when Mika Brzezinski was talking about this idea of Hunter Biden being harassed, of course, this is with the context of this week, the House Oversight Committee moved to hold Hunter Biden in contempt of Congress because he has refused to show up for a private deposition. They have subpoenaed him. He said that he's not going to comply because he only wants to do a public hearing, which when you're dealing with an investigation into financial records, obviously you can't just have a public hearing because a lot of that information is confidential and or classified. But he flagrantly showed up to the hearing and walked in and out to prove he's perfectly capable of showing up to a deposition. He just doesn't want to. So for them to describe that as harassment when the Democrats held Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon in contempt for refusing to show up to the politicized January 6th committee, they now face sentencing in those cases. It is so obviously biased and ridiculous from Mika and Joe Biden there. We're out of time. We're going to have to leave it there. Sorry for filibustering, Jessica, but we'll be back with more Rising after this.